She came only to watch her daughter graduate, but something in her posture made the Delta Force colonel's blood run cold. And suddenly, the entire ceremony became a deadly game of cat and mouse. The amphitheater at Fort Bragg's classified Delta compound buzzed with controlled energy. 200 families filled the concrete bleachers, American flags snapped in the North Carolina wind, and morning sunlight gleamed off ceremonial dress blues. Yet in the back row, one woman sat so still she seemed carved from shadow. Elena Vasquez, 52, wearing a plain black pantsuit and reading glasses, looked like any other proud mother fighting back tears. Her daughter, Captain Maria Vasquez, was about to join America's most lethal Special Operations Unit. What nobody realized, not even Maria, was that her mother had once been the world's most wanted woman. For 15 years, she had buried the truth beneath suburban normalcy and quiet humility. But that morning, the past was hunting her, woven into the very fabric of the ceremony. You're watching Shadow Stories, Classified Missions, Hidden Warriors. Drop your location in the comments and smash that subscribe button for the next reveal. The graduation field hummed with anticipation. 12 operators, the sole survivors from an original selection class of 200, stood in perfect formation. The culmination of 18 months of trials, designed to break minds, bodies, and souls. Maria was the only woman among them, 5'6", lean muscle wrapped in unwavering determination. To the crowd, she looked like every other newly minted Delta operator. To Elena, she still looked like the girl she'd raised alone, after fleeing Moscow with bullets in her back and a bounty on her head. Elena's hands remained perfectly still in her lap, but her eyes never stopped moving, scanning faces, cataloging exits, identifying threats. Old habits died hard. She had worked triple shifts as a hospital translator for 20 years, always hiding the part of herself forged in fire. 8 years as Spetsnaz Alpha Group, 3 more as a contract killer for the SVR, and 5 final years as the CIA's most valuable double agent. The woman Maria knew as Mom had once been Lena, the Phantom Volkov, a name whispered in terror across 3 continents. But Maria had never been told. Elena wanted her daughter to forge her own path, unshackled from a legacy written in blood. As the brass band fell silent, Colonel James Reaper stepped to the podium, a living legend whose mere presence commanded respect. His steel-gray eyes surveyed the graduates with predatory intensity. His voice carried the weight of classified missions and unnamed graves. Elena tried to focus on his words, but memories pressed in. The alley in Prague, where she'd killed 6 men with her bare hands. The scent of cordite in a Beirut safe house. The desperate radio call that had saved a CIA station from annihilation. She blinked them away, concentrating on Maria's ramrod-straight posture and the pride blazing in her dark eyes. And then, as Maria's name echoed across the loudspeakers, Elena lifted a hand to adjust her reading glasses. The sleeve of her jacket shifted slightly, revealing the faintest edge of scar tissue, a spiderweb of old burns that marked her as something far more dangerous than a hospital translator. On the podium, Colonel Reaper's voice faltered. His eyes swept the crowd and locked onto her like a guided missile. Recognition flashed across his features, followed immediately by calculation. His hand drifted almost imperceptibly toward the service weapon beneath his dress uniform. He had seen those scars before, in a classified briefing, on a most wanted poster, in the face of the woman who had once held a knife to his throat, in a Syrian black site. But he said nothing. Not yet. The game had just begun. Elena felt his stare like a sniper's crosshairs. After 2 decades of careful anonymity, her past was studying her from 50 yards away. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to vanish like smoke before the trap could close. But she couldn't. Not with Maria standing there, moments away from achieving everything she'd worked for. Colonel Reaper continued his speech, but his words came through gritted teeth. He spoke of sacrifice, brotherhood, and the thin line between civilization and chaos, but his eyes never left Elena's face. She could see him calculating odds, angles, backup plans, the same cold analysis that had made him legendary in the field. The ceremony continued, but tension crackled beneath the surface like a live wire. When the first graduate stepped forward to receive his beret, Reaper's voice dropped to a whisper in his tactical radio. "Overwatch, do you have eyes on the woman in the back row? Black suit? Reading glasses?" A voice crackled back through his earpiece. "Affirmative. Running facial recognition now." Elena's enhanced hearing caught the transmission. Her blood turned to ice. The facial recognition database would take 60 seconds to process, maybe 90 if she was lucky. After that, every alphabet agency in the federal government would know exactly who was sitting in their classified facility. She had 2 choices: run and abandon Maria at her moment of triumph, or stay and face whatever came next. There was never really a choice at all. As Maria stepped forward to receive her beret, Elena made her decision. She would give her daughter this moment, even if it cost her everything. The earpiece crackled again. "Sir, we have a match. That's—" "I know who it is," Reaper cut him off. His jaw clenched as he pinned the beret to Maria's uniform. "All units, maintain positions. Nobody moves without my command." Maria saluted crisply, her face glowing with pride. She scanned the crowd, finding her mother's face and offering a subtle smile. Elena smiled back, memorizing every detail of her daughter's triumph. It might be the last time she saw Maria as a free woman. The ceremony concluded with thunderous applause. As families flooded onto the field to congratulate their newly minted operators, Elena remained seated. She knew what was coming. 3 men in dark suits were already moving through the crowd, closing in on her position with the patient precision of federal agents. But they weren't the only ones moving. Elena's trained eyes picked out at least 6 other individuals who didn't belong, faces too alert, movements too coordinated, weapons poorly concealed. The graduation wasn't just a ceremony anymore. It had become a kill zone. Maria jogged toward her mother, beret clutched proudly in her hand. "Mom, can you believe it? I actually made it." Elena stood and embraced her daughter, whispering urgently in her ear, "I'm so proud of you, mija, but I need you to listen very carefully. In 30 seconds, I want you to walk toward the parking lot. Don't run, don't look back, just walk. Get in your car and drive to Aunt Rosa's house in Charlotte. Don't stop, don't call anyone, just go." Maria pulled back, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Mom, what are you talking about? What's wrong?" Before Elena could answer, Colonel Reaper's voice boomed across the field. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?" The crowd fell silent. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as Reaper stepped down from the podium, his gaze fixed on her like a laser sight. "We have a very special guest among us today," he announced, his voice carrying across the field with military precision, someone whose reputation precedes her by several decades. The federal agents froze mid-step, confusion rippling through their ranks. This wasn't part of their plan. Maria's grip tightened on her mother's arm as Reaper approached them with measured steps. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reaper continued, his voice growing harder, "I'd like you to meet Elena Vasquez. Some of you might know her better by her former name, Elena Volkov. Call sign, Phantom." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several families began backing away instinctively. The name Phantom was legend in special operations circles, a ghost story told in classified briefings, a boogeyman that even hardened operators feared. Maria's face went pale. "Mom? What is he talking about?" Elena's voice was steady as stone. "Later, mija. Right now. Just trust me." Reaper stopped 10 feet away, his hand resting openly on his sidearm. "Miss Volkov, you're under arrest for crimes against NS." "Actually," Elena interrupted, her Russian accent bleeding through for the first time in 20 years, "I think there's been a misunderstanding, Colonel." She reached slowly into her jacket, ignoring the dozen weapons that swung toward her. Instead of a gun, she produced a laminated ID card and tossed it at Reaper's feet. His eyes widened as he read it. CIA deep cover asset. Clearance level. Cosmic. Status. Active. "That's right, Colonel," Elena said calmly. "I've been working for your people for 15 years. Every kill, every mission, every piece of intelligence, all approved by Langley. All in service of this great nation." The field erupted in chaos. Federal agents barked into radios, demanding confirmation. Families scattered like startled birds. But Elena's focus remained on Maria, whose world had just shattered like glass. "You're a spy?" Maria whispered. "A killer?" "I was," Elena replied softly, "but that's not who I am anymore. Everything I did to build a better world for you." Reaper's earpiece crackled with urgent voices from Washington. After several tense minutes, he straightened and holstered his weapon. "Stand down, all units. Package is confirmed friendly." But as the immediate crisis passed, a new threat emerged. Among the scattered crowd, Elena spotted a face that made her blood freeze. Viktor Kozlov, her former Spetsnaz commander, the man she'd betrayed to save an entire CIA cell in Moscow. He was supposed to be dead, killed in a car bomb she'd planted herself. Yet, there he was, very much alive, and carrying what looked like a sniper rifle case. "Get down!" Elena screamed, tackling Maria to the ground just as the first shot rang out. The graduation ceremony had just become a battlefield. Chaos erupted across the field, as Viktor Kozlov's sniper bullet shattered the concrete where Elena had been standing moments before. Families screamed and scattered, diving behind bleachers and vehicles as more shots rang out from concealed positions around the amphitheater. Multiple shooters, Reaper barked into his radio. Lock down the base, nobody gets in or out. Elena rolled behind a concrete barrier, pulling Maria with her. Stay low, don't move, she commanded, her suburban mother persona vanishing like smoke. In its place stood something cold and lethal, the Phantom Reborn. Mom, what the hell is happening? Maria gasped. Old business, Elena replied grimly, scanning the field with predator's eyes. Victor always was persistent. 3 more shots cracked overhead, sending chunks of concrete flying. Elena's tactical mind immediately began calculating angles, distances, possible escape routes. 6 shooters minimum, positioned on high ground with overlapping fields of fire. Professional setup, military precision. Phantom! Victor's voice boomed across the field through a bullhorn. You cannot hide forever. You have 60 seconds to surrender, or we start executing civilians. Elena's jaw tightened. She'd hoped this day would never come, but she'd prepared for it nonetheless. Her fingers found the emergency beacon, sewn into her jacket's lining, a direct line to Langley that would bring overwhelming firepower within minutes. But minutes might be too long. Colonel Reaper low-crawled toward their position, his dress uniform torn and bloodied from diving behind cover. What do you need? He asked without preamble. Elena's respect for the man increased tenfold. No questions, no hesitation, just a soldier ready to fight. Radio your best shooters. Have them target the water tower, the maintenance building, and the communications array. That's where his overwatch positions are. How do you know? Elena's smile was razor sharp. Because that's where I would put them. Reaper keyed his radio, relaying instructions to his snipers. Meanwhile, Elena was formulating a more direct approach. She spotted a service tunnel entrance 50 yards away, part of Fort Bragg's underground utility network. If she could reach it unseen, she could flank Victor's position and end this before more innocents died. Maria, she said firmly, I need you to create a distraction. What? Mom, I'm not. You're Delta Force now. Elena cut her off. Act like it. When I give the signal, you and Colonel Reaper provide covering fire, while I move to that tunnel. Can you do that? Maria's training kicked in, overriding her shock. She nodded grimly, checking her sidearm. What's the signal? Elena's grin was terrifying. Trust me, you'll know. She pulled off her reading glasses and jacket, revealing the lean, scarred body of a born killer. The spider web of burn scars on her forearms told stories of torture survived and enemies defeated. Hidden in the small of her back was a ceramic knife, undetectable by metal scanners, but sharp enough to cut bone. 30 seconds, Victor's voice echoed across the field. Elena kissed her daughter's forehead gently. Remember, Mija, being good at violence doesn't make you a bad person. Sometimes it makes you the only thing standing between evil and innocence. Then she was moving, flowing like liquid shadow across the battlefield. Her first target was a shooter positioned behind an overturned picnic table. He never saw her coming. One moment he was scanning for targets through his scope. The next moment, Elena's knife was sliding between his ribs with surgical precision. She relieved him of his rifle and ammunition, then melted back into shadow. The man's death bought her precious seconds before Victor realized his perimeter was compromised. Her second target was more alert, catching movement in his peripheral vision and swinging his weapon toward her. But Elena was already inside his guard, the rifle barrel sweeping harmlessly past her head as she drove her knee into his solar plexus. He folded like paper, unconscious, before he hit the ground. 2 down, 4 to go. The third shooter spotted her and opened fire, forcing Elena to dive behind a memorial statue. Bullets chipped granite inches from her head as she calculated her next move. This one had discipline and good angles. He wouldn't be taken by surprise. But Elena had advantages he didn't. She knew this facility's layout from memory, having cased it extensively before Maria's selection process began. More importantly, she'd been killing professionals since before this man was born. She pulled a fragment of broken concrete and hurled it toward the maintenance building, drawing his fire. While he tracked the decoy, Elena sprinted in the opposite direction, using the statue as cover until she reached the underground tunnel entrance. The service tunnels beneath Fort Bragg were a maze of pipes, cables, and forgotten maintenance passages. Elena moved through them like a ghost, using her perfect spatial memory to navigate toward Victor's position. She could hear his voice above, still demanding her surrender through the bullhorn. She emerged behind the communications array just as Victor's patience ran out. "Time's up, Phantom! Now civilians die for your cowardice!" Elena saw him clearly for the first time in 20 years. Still tall and lean, gray now threading his dark hair, but the same cold eyes that had haunted her nightmares. He held a rifle trained on a group of terrified families, huddled near the bleachers. "Victor," she called out softly. He spun toward her voice, weapon tracking, but she was already moving. The ceramic knife left her hand in a perfect arc, spinning end over end toward his throat. He twisted aside at the last second, the blade scoring his cheek instead of finding his jugular. They faced each other across 30 feet of open ground, former comrades, former lovers, now eternal enemies. Victor's rifle was trained on her chest. Elena stood empty-handed, seemingly defenseless. 20 years I've hunted you," Victor said in Russian. 20 years you've hidden behind American protection. 20 years you should have stayed dead," Elena replied, in the same language. "You betrayed everything we built together. Our unit, our mission, our love." Elena's laugh was bitter as winter wind. "Our mission was murder. Our love was a lie. And our unit was a tool for monsters." Victor's finger tightened on the trigger. "Any last words, Phantom?" Elena smiled. "Yes. You never were as good at counting as you were at talking." Victor frowned. Then understanding dawned in his eyes. He'd been so focused on Elena that he'd lost track of his remaining shooters. The silence from his overwatch positions meant they were already dead, picked off by Reaper's snipers while Elena held his attention. He spun toward the bleachers, seeking hostages to regain leverage, but found only empty concrete. The civilians had been evacuated during Elena's tunnel run, shepherded to safety by Delta operators while she played cat and mouse in the underground. "Checkmate," Elena whispered. Victor's roar of rage echoed across the empty field as he opened fire, but Elena was no longer there. She dropped and rolled the instant his attention shifted, coming up with a pistol she'd lifted from the second shooter she'd killed. Her first shot took Victor in the shoulder, spinning him around. Her second shattered his rifle. Her third put him on his knees. As Elena approached her fallen enemy, she became aware of applause. The bleachers were filling again with families and graduates, all watching her with expressions ranging from awe to terror. She'd just demonstrated why legends like the Phantom were whispered about in hushed tones. Colonel Reaper approached slowly, hands visible and empty. "Miss Volkov, Elena, that was necessary," she finished quietly. "Nothing more, nothing less." Maria appeared beside her mother, studying the woman she'd thought she knew. "How many people have you killed?" Elena's voice was steady. "Enough. Too many. But every death served a purpose to protect people who couldn't protect themselves." "Including me?" "Especially you." Victor coughed, drawing their attention. Blood frothed at his lips as he struggled to speak. "You think this ends it? There are others, the organization remembers." Elena knelt beside him, her voice gentle despite everything. "Victor, it's over. The Cold War ended 30 years ago. Let go of the hate." His eyes found hers, and for a moment, she saw the young soldier she'd once loved. Could have been different. "Yes," she whispered. "It could have been." Victor's eyes closed for the final time. As medical teams and federal agents swarmed the scene, Elena found herself face to face with her daughter. Maria's expression was unreadable, cycling through confusion, betrayal, and something that might have been respect. "So what now?" Maria asked. "Do you go back to being a translator? Pretend none of this happened?" Elena shook her head. "That life is over. Has been since the moment Reaper recognized me. Langley will want a full debrief, then probably another assignment. There's always another monster that needs killing. And us? What happens to us?" Elena's heart broke a little. "That depends on you, mija. I understand if you can't forgive." Maria's embrace cut off her words. "You're my mother. Everything else is just details." They held each other as chaos swirled around them, two warriors finding peace in the eye of the storm. Later that evening, after the debriefings and paperwork and classified phone calls, Elena sat on her hotel room bed, staring at a new CIA assignment folder. The target was a human trafficking ring operating out of Eastern Europe. Dangerous work. Probably a one-way mission. A knock at her door interrupted her brooding. Maria entered without waiting for permission, still wearing her dress blues from the interrupted ceremony. "I've been thinking," Maria announced. "About?" "Delta Force is nice and all, but their missions are pretty straightforward. Kick down doors, shoot bad guys, come home. Not much complexity." Elena raised an eyebrow. "And?" Maria grinned, a expression Elena suddenly recognized as identical to her own predatory smile. "I'm thinking CIA might be more interesting. I'm family business." Elena stared at her daughter in shock. "Maria, you can't possibly mean..." Why not? You said it yourself. Someone has to stand between evil and innocence, and you've been doing it alone for too long. It's not a game, Mia. People die. Good people die. Good people die anyway, Mom. At least this way, they die for something that matters. Elena closed the assignment folder and really looked at her daughter. Maria stood straight and tall, her dark eyes burning with the same cold fire that had driven Elena through decades of shadow warfare. The same iron will that had carried her through Delta selection. The training would be brutal, Elena warned. Harder than anything you've experienced. And if you wash out, I won't. If you're captured, I won't be. If you're killed, then I'll die as your daughter. There are worse legacies. Elena was quiet for a long moment, studying the woman her little girl had become. Finally, she reopened the assignment folder and slid it across the bed. Eastern European trafficking ring, she explained. They specialize in selling children to the highest bidder. The local authorities are either bought off or too scared to act. Maria scanned the file, her expression hardening with each page. How many children? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. When do we leave? Elena's smile could have cut glass. Tomorrow. But first, we need to discuss your cover identity. 3 months later, a seemingly routine trafficking bust in Prague made international headlines. 37 children rescued, dozens of criminals dead or captured, an entire network dismantled in a single night. The official reports credited local police and Interpol cooperation. They made no mention of 2 women who moved like shadows through the criminal underworld, a legendary assassin and her protégé, carrying on a family tradition written in blood and justified by results. Because some legacies aren't meant to end, they're meant to evolve. The graduation ceremony at Fort Bragg had been intended to mark the end of Maria's journey toward becoming a warrior. Instead, it marked the beginning of something far more dangerous. A dynasty of guardians operating in the spaces between light and shadow, where official justice couldn't reach, but mother and daughter could. And in the darkest corners of the world, where innocence met evil and screamed for help, whispers began to spread of 2 phantoms, hunting in tandem. The original legend had returned from suburban retirement, but she wasn't alone anymore. She had an heir, and together, they were rewriting the rules of what it meant to stand guard against the darkness. Because courage isn't about uniforms or medals or official recognition. It's about the willingness to sacrifice everything, including your own humanity, so that someone else might live to see tomorrow. Elena Volkov had proven that. On battlefields around the world, Maria Vasquez was about to learn it in the shadow war that never ends. The story ends where it began, with a mother and daughter united by love and divided by secrets. But now the secrets were out, the masks were off, and the real work could finally begin. Shadow Stories, where legends are born and heroes hide in plain sight. Hit that subscribe button because the next mission starts tomorrow, and you won't want to miss what happens when 2 phantoms go to war.